We dig into this a little before we take the next question in terms of a possible comment or recommendation, because in fact we were discussing this last night, weren't we? I remember chairing part of the UK presidency's sort of public-facing seminar series, but about technology, because obviously I sit in both camps, and so I'm usually either the most technological person in a room full of artists or the most arty person in a room full of technologists. We were facing the question about whether this obsession with innovation equals patents is essentially an industrial age idea. And that because we haven't moved, we really aren't in an information age in terms of our policies and in terms of the Lisbon Agenda more generally, until we can see that innovation and creativity aren't just about improving industrial type processes or industrial machines. Speaking to technologists about that, I was given a blank wall of political and definition problems. The Frascati definition of R&D does not allow funding. And I know in great detail, because I've been involved in work in the UK to try and work out what it does allow, but does not allow funding for creative, in quotes, endeavour in that way. And in the UK, we challenged that question with our taxation department, because there were research and development tax credits available for innovation. And the received wisdom from professional advisors, accountants and such, and banks, was that these tax credits were simply not available to companies in the creative industries. So I was chairing a trade body at the time, and I asked a number of leading companies, actually comparable to Y-Dreams in terms of the business territories that they were in, to sit with the taxation inspectors and take them through the innovation process that they had been through in order to create the creative product, whether it was a computer game or whatever it was. And interestingly, we did find territory where the taxation credits were applicable, but they were only in the technical R&D. So if the company had created a new algorithm, new piece of software, then we were able to apply a credit. But we couldn't apply a credit to the product which had come from that. We couldn't in any way apply a credit to the creative experience which the user had. Now that seems to me to be an amazingly limiting position to take. But I don't know, do other people feel this is an issue that is worth raising, or is it a very limited issue for people in the room? I have a hand rising here. Is that specifically on this point?
No, maybe because it touches upon it, but I wanted to add to the comments that Bart Hill was making. I'm Lucy Huiskens. I'm from Kunstenaars & Co., which means artists and cultural entrepreneurship. I'm currently working on a program that works with art education, art schools, to see how you could integrate, let's say, the education of entrepreneurship into their programs. And I think one of the issues that to me is very important, it also has to do with the issue of horizontalism, where we were talking about earlier, is that if we really think that we should take the Lisbon agenda seriously, you have to try and change the art schools into far more interdisciplinary educational system, where art students not only are taught the skills that you were talking about, but also to be able to cooperate with other disciplines, with other people, with technicians, with economic business people, etc. And I think that is a responsibility also of the art schools to change in that direction. And I think that also touches upon the point you made.
Michael, does that reflect how?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting thing, but it points up to a European problem, and that is that Europe has inherited a tradition of conservatoires and dance schools and things like this, which for various historical reasons have existed in a way outside of mainstream education. So, for example, you don't find the conservatoire on the university campus. It's downtown somewhere. Now, in the last 2 to 3 decades, the conservator has turned to the university, usually the local university, for a greater academic validation. Up to then, they were giving what they called diplomas to people who were doing maybe 6 times the amount of work that universities were giving degrees to people for. And then, so, you know, it had to do with status and all like that. So I sympathize with your task, because to introduce an interdisciplinary element into the art school, if the art school itself is not on an interdisciplinary campus. Now, I know there are notable exceptions to this in Europe, but I know this personally because my own institute, the Irish World Academy of Music and Dance at the University of Limerick, is within the university, fully within, and it involves performance, by the way, not just musicology. So, you know, it has many performers as well as scholars and thinkers. And just a final point there, it raises a contemporary issue of doing and thinking, and the difference between doing and thinking, and that the educational system historically, and to some degree still, is happier to reward you for thinking and less sure of rewarding you for doing. So what we've inherited there are institutions of doing, where you learn to play Bach and the cello, for example, as distinct from institutions with a heritage of thinking, where you learn to write about playing Bach and the cello. Now, if you had to choose between one or other as to which was the more important, playing the cello or writing about playing the cello, they're both very important. Now, they are both very important, and there is a natural curiosity as to what happens when you pull that bow across the string. But if you weren't pulling the bow across the string in the first place, there'd be nothing to talk about. You know, so everything is bonus cion, everything is upside down in that regard. And I think the information age is also presenting us with this challenge. And the UK is actually, to some degree, a leader in this global domain of trying to think outside the box and trying to integrate the doing things into what up to now has been the thinking environment of the universities.